your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks for joining us for our Week in Review. Friday was a deadline day to buy a $10 Alberta United Conservative membership to vote for the next party leader and premier. The party will then go to the memberships to confirm information and expects to have the final tally on how many have been sold in about 2 weeks or so. 7 candidates are on the ballot seeking to replace Premier Jason Kenney in the party's top job. The next key date in the race is the second debate, slated for August 30th in Edmonton. And 6 of those 7 UCP candidates vying for the party's leadership discussed education, spending, policy, and the future of education in Alberta with teachers from across the province this past week. The Public Education Forum at this year's Alberta Teachers Association Summer Conference was Wednesday at the Banff Centre. Leela Ahir, Todd Lowen, Danielle Smith, Rebecca Schultz, and Rajan Sani attended the event in person, while Brian Jean dialed in via Zoom. Travis Taves did not participate, citing a scheduling conflict. Friday, August 12th at midnight was the deadline to buy a UCP membership to be eligible to vote in the October leadership vote. The Alberta NDP say the status of Women Minister Jackie Armstrong-Hominick and Secretary to the Minister for the Status of Women Jackie Lovely need to resign. It stems from the essay contest in which Armstrong-Hominick awarded 3rd place to an entry which said women should stay home and have babies instead of pursuing a career outside of the home. The NDP's Children's Services critics says both women need to resign, not only because of the essay contest, but because they have not been transparent or accountable to Albertans.
After dragging this out for days, we now know who the UCP made these decisions, but we still do not know why. And let's be clear, there are only 2 possible explanations for why. First, the Associate Minister and Parliamentary Secretary for the Status of Women were too lazy and distracted to read a 500-word essay themselves. Or the second option is that the Associate Minister and Parliamentary Secretary read the essay in question and chose it because they endorsed the views that it contained.
The abrupt resignation of Doug Schweitzer from the UCP cabinet is seen as a blow to the party in the midst of a leadership race and less than a year away from the Alberta provincial election. Schweitzer submitted his resignation as Jobs, Economy and Innovation Minister on August 5th to Premier Jason Kenney. He also announced that he would not be seeking re-election as MLA, but would stay on until the end of his term. Schweitzer has a young family and was a partner in a Calgary law firm that specialized in restructuring and bankruptcy before he ran for office. Over the past year, he helped to secure some major wins for the province, including a booming tech sector, a growing film industry, and a jobs market that caught fire with Alberta's unemployment rate lowering to 4.8% this month. Industry analysts say Alberta is leading the country in economic recovery despite rising inflation and interest rates. An altercation outside a bar in a popular tourist town has resulted in the death of a 26-year-old man. At approximately 2:26 a.m. on August 5th, Banff RCMP were advised of a fight that broke out outside of a local drinking establishment in the resort town. Upon arrival, an injured man was located and taken to hospital where he was declared deceased. A 22-year-old man from Banff was taken into custody and his court appearance has been put over until the end of the month. John Christopher Ariza is charged with the second-degree murder in the death of the 26-year-old Ethan Enns Gano. Defense lawyers working with Legal Aid Alberta voted to stop taking any cases for 2 weeks. They say it's their response to what they call the provincial government underfunding the system. The Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, the Criminal Trial Lawyers Association, and the Southern Alberta Defense Lawyers Association have been pushing the province to increase legal aid's budget in line with other Canadian jurisdictions. Alberta Justice says it's reached out to all 3 organizations for a meeting. As we reported earlier this week, a 35-year-old Medicine Hat man who told his family he was going fishing in the Crow's Nest Pass was found dead last weekend. RCMP say Rajesh John's body was located at the base of a waterfall near Lynx Creek and Carbondale around 12 p.m. last Sunday. A search for John was launched after his family reported him missing. His vehicle was found at the Lynx Creek campground on Friday evening, and his body was discovered a couple of days later with the help of Lethbridge Fire Department's dive team. After the break, we will have more about what that man's friends are doing to help his family. Lynx Creek in the Crow's Nest Pass is known for its beauty and recreational activities like camping, hiking, and fishing. But last weekend, it was the location of a grim discovery. A Medicine Hat man who had been reported missing was recovered at the bottom of the creek near some waterfall rapids. Rajesh John was an avid fisherman and had been making his mark in the sport through his YouTube channel, and he had his share of fans. I spoke with friends who remember the 35-year-old angler known as Vlogger John, who say his death has been a sobering lesson to other outdoorsmen.
There you go. Most fish.
Most fish, not the size.
Not the size.
A passion for fishing, a passion for vlogging. Put them together, you have Vlogger John. His friends knew him simply as John, the smiley, friendly fisherman who in the past 5 years had really developed his skills in angling.
Like, he was a sponge for knowledge.
And grew his following to over 4,500 subscribers on his YouTube channel.
He's the funniest guy. He's so spontaneous.
Just the things he would say would just make you just die. Like, it was just hilarious, some of the stuff that he would just come up with.
Rajesh John, which was his real name, had worked his way up from walleye and pike and had only recently set his sights on targeting bull trout, an elusive fish that you have to travel into the mountains and backwoods for if you want the giant ones.
And that's exactly what he was doing these last, half dozen trips. He was obsessed with getting into the backcountry, into these rare, uncharted spots where he could have chance at fishing for fish that had never been caught before.
But it all came to an end on August 3rd when a trip to the Crow's Nest Pass cost him his life. The Medicine Hat husband and father told his family he was heading towards the mountains via Lethbridge on a vlogging fishing expedition. He was expected home late the next evening on August 4th, but when he didn't show, he was reported missing.
Started searching. There was quite a few of us who were very familiar with the area and very good outdoorsmen. I mean, there was not a sign of him.
Police believed Rajesh to be in the grassy lake area because it was the last place his cell phone pinged. But his fishing buddies had a hunch they knew where he was, and a manhunt for him began near Lynx Creek in the Crow's Nest Pass.
I mean, we had a pretty good idea of what river he was going, and there isn't many spots for the parking to be. And he wasn't much of a hiker. So, I mean, we knew he was going to be close to his vehicle.
And it turned out his friends were right. He was found underwater at the bottom of a waterfall not far from where he'd left his car.
I call them plunge pools. It's like a run of where the water will spill in maybe 5 feet down into a deep pool. They act like washer machines and they'll spin you around in them. So unless you're a very good swimmer, which John wasn't, unfortunately, they're very hard to get out of.
According to Adam Turnbull, a fellow fisherman and vlogger, Rajesh always wore his GoPro while fishing, and that day was no exception.
So they found his GoPro. There was no foul play. There was no wild animal involved. So he unfortunately hit a snag and lost his footing and fell in.
Apparently there was a backpack that someone had lost in the water from somebody else a previous day at some time, and he had hooked it with his fishing rod. And when he bent down to retrieve it is when he fell in.
Turnbull says, if anything, this has stressed the importance of using a buddy system when going out into the wilderness.
And it's just a hard lesson, and you never know what's going to happen.
If you are planning on doing stuff like that, I mean, you need to let people know whereabouts you're going. That was a big mistake on his part.
I'm catching a fish now.
Rajesh John did finally get to conquer the elusive bull trout, and his friends say he died doing exactly what he loved to do.
He was there to catch some bull trout, and as far as we know, he caught 2.
For Bridge City News, I'm Jeanette Roche. Rajesh John's friends have set up a GoFundMe page to help get his body back to his parents in India, where he'll be buried. There is also a silent auction for donations that will run this weekend. Well, political office is often about the ideas and the passion to lead. Independent MLA Drew Barnes, who represents Cypress Medicine Hat, joined me earlier this week, and I asked him what he thinks is important and what is missing from the leadership race.
I guess what's most important to me is let's make families and communities and community groups bigger, and let's make government smaller. And I haven't seen any of the candidates talk about that. Where do you start? There's 9 American states with no income tax. Oil and gas royalties in Alberta hit $16.2 billion last year.
We'll have more from Drew Barnes right after the break. Alberta's Conservative members will choose their new leader on October the 6th. One topic discussed during the leadership race is Alberta potentially bringing in a Sovereignty Act. Independent MLA from Medicine Hat, Cypress, Drew Barnes likes the idea, but says he does have some concerns. So now, Drew, you have known most, if not all of these people for a long time. So when you look at the various candidates, do you see some red flags that you think maybe people should know about?
It's time to talk about more competitive utilities and insurance situations so Alberta families have a better chance for more economic freedom and more freedom in general. So I see red flags for all of them right now. Back to Premier Jason Kenney, who so never met expectations, who so clearly didn't understand Albertans or Alberta values. Anyone targeting the status quo is of great concern, of course. But the silver lining here is I think their membership sales end August 12th. So after August 12th, the race changes from trying to sell as many $10 memberships as possible to competing on ideas and platforms. So I hope some real conservative ideas will come forward.
What would be your suggestions then for a course of action for Alberta working with Ottawa?
Okay, well, thank you for that one. My strongest suggestion was when I put out my dissenting opinion on the Fair Deal panel, which is 2 years ago. I said 3 years from now or 3 years from then, Albertans should have an independence referendum. We should just put Ottawa on notice. Ottawa, it's time to give us resource movement. We have the 3rd biggest oil reserve in the world, and we're only number 5 producer, so we're not up to our potential. We all know that India and China, with 250 coal-fired electric generation plants coming online over the next few years, if we could get them our liquefied natural gas, that would make the world better for everyone. But we never talk the truth. So let's make that one of the necessary requirements. Secondly, our House of Commons, our Supreme Court representation is so inadequate compared to our population. That needs to be changed as well. Banking laws are geared around home ownership in Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. Banking laws aren't geared around resource extraction or agriculture in Western Canada. The carbon tax punishes Western economies dramatically. And I think the best thing to do is just put Ottawa on notice. We demand and we expect a fair deal, and 3 years from now we're gonna hold them accountable. But also at the same time, like Quebec legislature does all the time, they use the notwithstanding clause consistently.
Drew, it almost sounds like you're talking about sovereignty. So are you in favor of the Sovereignty Act?
My concern with the Sovereignty Act is we're asking Albertans to basically do some things that are against the laws of Canada. Let's set let's set Alberta on a path to be free and prosperous.
Okay. So then, with that said, I have to ask you about Danielle Smith. Obviously, she's a huge fan of the Sovereignty Act, but of course, some may be thinking that she's cresting right now in her popularity. But I guess when we look back at her track record of her political decisions, she's not always had a lot of wins and has suggestions about Alberta going net zero. So in your opinion, will she be able to follow through on her plans if she is elected leader?
I am so surprised that she's so much in favor of net zero in Trudeau's plan. I was not elected to help Justin Trudeau destroy Alberta's oil and gas industry. I've seen reports that working towards net zero will not only cost Alberta 150 to 200,000 jobs, but it will make electricity 3 times more expensive. And it doesn't solve the problem, as we talked about 2 minutes ago, of getting, good liquefied natural gas to India and China, where so much of the coal-fired electric generation has happened. I'm grateful that Cypress Medicine had elected me in 2012. I was one of the 17 Wild Rosers with Danielle Smith. I was one of the first to put my foot down, to refuse to cross the floor. That was a huge turning point for Alberta. And, it's I guess for anybody voting in this leadership, they have to consider that all that happened and what went down. And, I think there was 5 of us that stayed and 11 that left. And, those are considerations for sure. And I would say to Albertans, vote for your values.
After the break, we hear from one of the actual candidates in this leadership race. Stay with us. The United Conservative Party will be choosing its new leader on October 6th. One of the leading candidates to succeed Jason Kenney as Premier is Fort McMurray Lethbridge MLA and former leader of the Wild Rose Party, Brian Jean. He recently joined Hal Roberts to discuss his platform and how he plans on sticking up for farmers against the Trudeau Liberals should he become Alberta Premier.
Brian, a number of seniors who we've chatted with here on Bridge City News say they really feel neglected by their governments. Now, you visited a Lethbridge Senior Centre recently. What were some of the concerns that our seniors shared with you?
Inflation. They talked about prices going up, whether it's groceries, whether it's appliances, whether it's fixtures. And that's why I proposed a royalty-free gasoline and diesel program. You know what? We own the oil and diesel here in Alberta. Why are we paying royalties on it to our own government so they can go spend it? So I'm proposing that we would do royalty-free oil and gasoline for all of the oil, for all the gasoline and diesel that we consume here in Alberta. 380,000 barrels a day is what we consume here. That's a lot of gas and diesel. But remember, that money comes out of Albertans' pockets, goes into the Alberta government, and then we pay equalization payments on that money. So I'm going to stop that, first of all, which will leave more money in Alberta and more money for Albertans. But it'll also lower it. For instance, in a couple of months ago, we had prices that it would have been about 30 cents a liter to remove the fuel tax and also the royalties on Albertans' oil and diesel, which is what I promised to do if I become Premier, and I will do that. And it will mean the lowest prices of gasoline and diesel in Canada. It'll also mean that groceries will go down, appliances will go down, all those things that come in on trucks, the price will go down. All those things that come in on planes, the price will go down. All those things that come in for trains will also come down. And you know what? This will become a hub for airlines, for transportation companies, for jobs for Albertans. And that's why I think lower prices are better, because it keeps money in Albertans' jeans and makes sure we don't send it to Ottawa. The other thing is transmission and distribution charges for electricity. We're going to have surpluses over the next few years, and we need to pay down the debt for sure. But until those long-term bonds become due, we should use those surpluses and the interest derived from that to help Albertans with transmission and distribution charges. They are outrageous right now. We've overbuilt hugely in the past. Our governments have, both PC and NDP. And we have to stop that overbuild. And what we need to do is focus on making sure that Albertans can afford those huge distribution charges, those huge transmission charges, which we're paying right now, primarily in rural Alberta as a majority, but we're paying it right across the province. So what I'm saying is, let's lower costs as much as we can. The other thing we need to do is look at affordable housing. I'm a big believer in tripartite agreements and making sure that we work with groups like the Salvation Army Other groups, I'm a believer, and I know that there are a lot of really good groups out there that do a lot of work, and they do it for nothing. They do it because they love their Lord, and they want to do something, or they love their God and they want to do something. And there's amazing groups right across the world that do it. And we need to partner with those groups. We need to make sure that the government funding gets the biggest bang for the buck. And let's utilize those NGOs and the other groups that are available right now. And let's make sure we get good housing that then is going to have good management afterwards, because our seniors, frankly, for what they did for us in this country and what we have today, I think we should treat them a lot better than what we do. And we can't rely on Ottawa for it. Let's face it, Justin Trudeau's not going to help us. We need to help ourselves and our seniors right here. And I'm going to do that as Premier if I get that privilege.
So, Brian, we only have about 30 seconds left here, but I wanted to talk to you a bit about agriculture. It's a big part of our economy here in southwestern Alberta. Farmers are angry at the Trudeau Liberals for recommending they reduce fertilizer use. How would you stand up to Ottawa and support our farmers?
Well, the first thing is I wouldn't obey that particular law because it's an infringement on our jurisdiction under Section 92 of the Constitution. As I've mentioned quite a few times about the Constitution, we need to open it. People think it's a pipe dream. It is not. I litigated for 10 years. It's an agreement. We can go and we can renegotiate it. And every province in Canada right now wants to do it. They want to stop the pipeline. They've all joined the pipeline appeal. They want to open up the Constitution in relation to healthcare funding. There's a lot of provinces that are not happy with the distribution of votes across the country and corresponding politicians. There's a lot of things we need to do. And the only way we're going to fix any of this is, frankly, to open up the Constitution, give them on day number one, I've said I will give them a Section 46 notice under the Constitution, which is actually laid out in paragraph 69 of the reference case from Quebec. And let's face it, the Supreme Court of Canada thought they were laying the path for Quebec to do certain things. So they laid out the rules. And now Albertans are going to take advantage of it. We got a 62% vote on the referendum, and that referendum is the authority to open up the Constitution for negotiations. So that's what I'm going to immediately do. That's why I came up with the referendum suggestion when I was the leader of the Wild Rose. That's why I undertook a study with economists across Canada, and that's why I suggested a referendum was the only way to do that. Jason Kenney did that for us. Now let's go the next step. He didn't. I will.
When we return, we take a look around the region at some of the local stories that made headlines this week. Stay with us. Welcome back. The contentious issue of paid parking at NMAX Centre is moving ahead. Starting on September 1st, patrons of the event centre will have to pay $5 for parking during concerts, cultural events, and Lethbridge Hurricanes games. Canes season ticket holders will not have to pay for parking. Lethbridge College students will also have to pay fees if they want to park in that lot. Lethbridge City Council approved paid parking after looking at an external operation review of the centre. Kim Gallucci, the general manager of the NMAX Centre, says he knows paid parking will be an adjustment for the community, especially the Canes Hockey Club.
They had made it very clear that they did not want paid parking. And for all the reasons that we believe are, it hinders people from buying tickets to some degree. As we worked through with them, season ticket holders are very important to them. And by making this work and making the playoffs work for them, it's probably the best situation of the paid parking scenario that we could come up with. So it took us a little while, but we got there.
Gallucci is encouraging patrons to pay with the Flowbird app if they are going to park at the NMAX Centre. The final numbers are in for the 2022 Tim Hortons Brier here in Lethbridge. A report says it was a huge success. Close to $17 million was generated for the local economy during the special curling event. Over 18,000 out-of-towners attended the festivities as well. As BCN's Micah Quinn explains, local organizations are saying this event was vital in growing the economy and building tourism here in Lethbridge.
The 2022 Tim Hortons Brier was held at the NMAX Centre in Lethbridge from March 4th to the 13th. A report by Sport Tourism Canada was completed and showed the combined spending from out-of-town visitors, staff, spectators, and media, combined with the total expenditures made by the event organizers, brought in just under $13.2 million, and a total of $19.7 million was injected into the economy in Alberta. This includes close to $16.8 million of economic activity here in Lethbridge. A total of 128 jobs were also generated for the event.
You know, the amount of exposure Lethbridge had on national and international news media, hopefully many of those athletes, as well as their friends, family, and others, want to come back and spend a little bit more time in the city once they experienced our great hospitality. It's harder to measure. It won't show up in the report anywhere, but it's those long-term benefits of increased tourism and interest in our exposure of Lethbridge that's important as well.
Nearly 75% of visitors for the Brier came from Alberta, with Saskatchewan, British Columbia, and Ontario visitors next on the list. A total of 18,500 out-of-town visitors attended, with the average stay being just over 5 nights in Lethbridge during the event.
This isn't the first time that Lethbridge has done a report like this for one of the major events, but because this event was, right as we were coming out of all of the COVID regulations, it was really important to kind of take a look so we could see the impacts that these events have, both pre-COVID and post-COVID.
The report went on to say that the 2022 Tim Hortons Brier was a significant factor in people choosing to visit Lethbridge, rating it a 9.3 out of 10. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Well, Lethbridge College will be taking part in this year's Open Farm Days for the very first time. This weekend's event will be an opportunity for families to learn all about where our food comes from.
I think historically Open Farm Days have been hosted by small market garden type places with livestock, stuff like that. So it's really cool to have an opportunity to learn more about the crop side of things. One of the really cool things actually about our farm is that we have an irrigation demo canal. So there's sort of a small scale running model of how irrigation canals work, how that infrastructure is maintained, how water is metered out, because it's an extremely precise thing.
Open Farm Days will be taking place on a Saturday. More details can be found on our website, bridgecitynews.ca. Fans of soccer in our city are set for a treat this weekend. The Lethbridge Soccer Association is hosting the Tier 2 Alberta Youth Outdoor Soccer Provincials. Players from across the province will be taking part, including 5 teams from Lethbridge.
Locals can see like what Edmonton and Calgary and like Fort McMurray they're doing and stuff, and so it kind of brings parents together. They can talk about programs with each other. And then the local community can see, quite a high quality of soccer being played. It's going to be a good time and a hot time. So there's going to be, I think, a lot of water breaks happening, and hopefully everything and everybody stays, cool.
The first game took place on Friday at 3 p.m. and the tournament will wrap up on a Sunday. Coming up after the break, BCN catches up with UCP leadership hopeful Travis Taves. Keep it right here.